Unlike the strictly enforced limits for environmental toxins like asbestos or lead, the federal government mandates no indoor air quality thresholds for mold exposure. The EPA and OSHA possess the authority to issue advisory guidance regarding mold, but they do not enforce binding numerical exposure limits. This leaves commercial operators and property managers navigating large-scale microbial contamination without a clear, objective federal benchmark to dictate their response. Without the liability and the rules of engagement default entirely to state legislation and civil litigation. This jurisdictional vacuum necessitates a completely different mechanism to establish an enforceable standard of care. Jurisdictions like Texas, Florida, and New York filled that void by enacting mandatory licensing programs with statutory enforcement. These statutes transform industry recommendations into enforceable requirements, mandating specific operational models to protect consumers from fraud. The technical foundation that underpins these state laws is the ANSI IIRC S520 Standard for professional mold remediation. This voluntary, consensus-based standard was built by a coalition of microbiologists, industrial hygienists, and legal experts to combine academic principles with practical field applications. Together, the S520 and state statutes force a strict hierarchy of professional roles. They intentionally fragment the process to prevent any single entity from controlling a resolution project from start to finish. The foundation of this hierarchy is the Mold Assessment Technician, or MAT. They serve as the primary field-level professionals. Their mandate is strict, objective collection of environmental data. They don't design the actual cleanup strategy. This wireframe diagram illustrates the technician's inspection process. Cool blue lines represent visible structure. Red zones highlight hidden dampness and envelope breaches. Inside these compromised zones, the MAT deploys air spore traps, swabs, and tape lifts to capture localized spore concentration. Physical sampling is not always required. A thorough visual assessment of the building's moisture dynamics often provides the most critical diagnostic evidence. The technician operates strictly under the supervision of a licensed consultant. They collect the raw data, but they do not interpret it. The MAT's sole purpose is to serve as the objective eyes and ears on the ground, creating an unbiased evidentiary baseline before any demolition begins. That field data moves up the hierarchy to the Mold Assessment Consultant, or MAC. They are the senior-level architect of the project. The MAC interprets the laboratory results, the building history, and the physical field data through the disciplines of building science and psychrometry. The ultimate output of this intellectual analysis is the Mold Remediation Protocol. This protocol is a legally binding scope of work. It dictates precise containment methods, removal quantities, and required biocide treatments. It also establishes the specific clearance criteria, the objective metrics that will define whether the future cleanup is successful. By authoring the protocol, the MAC assumes the legal and intellectual liability, converting raw environmental data into a strictly prescribed action plan. Standard commercial projects are managed by the MAC. However, highly complex environments require a specialized escalation of professional credentials. For high-stake sites like hospitals or industrial facilities facing complex toxicological threats, a certified industrial hygienist takes authority. A hygienist brings advanced expertise in toxicology and exposure monitoring that surpasses the standard MAC license. Severe moisture failures frequently require cross-disciplinary experts. Structural engineers must be called in to assess framing that has lost its load-bearing capacity to rot. Likewise, specialized HVAC professionals are necessary when mechanical ductwork contamination threatens to distribute spores throughout an entire building. Scaling the professional expertise to match the environmental and structural complexity is a core mandate of the industry's standard of care. Once the MAC signs the Mold Remediation Protocol, the assessment phase halts abruptly. This split-screen schematic demonstrates the statutory firewall. Enforced by states like Texas and New York, this legal doctrine prevents conflicts of interest. The core prohibition: the entity inspecting the building and writing the protocol is legally banned from performing cleanup on that same property. The full-service contractor model, where one company tests and remediates, introduces immense financial and health liabilities through self-dealing. The mold remediation contractor operates exclusively as an independent entity on the execution side of this firewall. The remediator receives the MAC's protocol and translates it into a detailed operational work plan for their demolition crews. This legal separation forces the remediator to execute a plan they didn't write, permanently stripping away the financial incentive to overprescribe or underdeliver cleanup services. We move forward to the completion of the remediator's physical work, following the containment, demolition, and sanitization phases. The completion of physical labor does not mean the project is legally closed. The remediator cannot declare their own success. This triggers the post-remediation verification, or clearance testing phase, looping the process back across the firewall. The original MAC returns to the site. They audit the remediator's work to ensure the physical environment matches the exact clearance criteria established in their initial protocol. This verification requires a visual confirmation that all visible mold and wood rot are gone, backed by final air or surface sampling. This creates a closed accountability loop. The remediator's work is systematically audited by the independent architect who designed it. The successful completion of this verification results in a formal certificate of mold remediation provided to the property owner. This document provides documented evidence of compliance, protecting the owner's interests during future real estate transactions or civil litigation. The system relies on 3 distinct pillars: the objective data of the MAT, the protocol design of the MAC, and independent execution by the remediator. Bypassing this hierarchy, even in states without mandatory licensing, violates the IICRC S520 and complicates the defense against future liability claims. In a regulatory landscape devoid of federal thresholds, the statutory firewall and this strict professional hierarchy are the proven mechanisms to guarantee a safe, conflict-free indoor environment.